things that I want us all to make sure that we understand too, because this is something that is very near and dear to my heart. This is a cause, is that we're here to figure out a way for all of us to work together, not to hold anyone accountable, because there's so much to this. This is just, I mean, if you think about it in the whole picture of it, it's almost something that you can't even comprehend. So what I'm hoping that we do with this is that we open our eyes, we get educated, people get educated, we start working with the court systems, we start working in our communities, we start figuring out ways to help to end this problem. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think in my mind even, and I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but I've held the judges responsible. Well, the judges made they made a bad decision, you know, not knowing that everybody there's two sides to every story, you know, and so I just want us to make sure that this is not a blame game. This is a game of how are we going to figure out what we're going to do? How are we going to figure out how we're going to get this to change? Do we become watchdogs? Do we go to court? Do we put people's feet to the fire? You know, I mean, there's a lot of options, and hopefully Ms. Boatwright's going to point us all in the direction that we need to go. But I just want to make sure that we don't cross any lines and place any blame where.
Well, I'm glad you said what you said, because I think it's important that the public remember, and certainly the public from the standpoint of the law is not as sophisticated as those of us that work within it every day from the standpoint of the knowledge of the ins and outs. But I think that the public knows enough to remember, if they're reminded, that everyone within our criminal justice system has a role. And the prosecutor has a role, the defense attorney has a role, and the judge has a role. And the judge's role is such that the person who is accused is only accused. Our system of justice says that. The person who is accused under our system of justice is actually innocent until the state proves that that person is guilty, regardless of any preconceived notions that we might have, as plain as they may appear. Until they are formally proven guilty, then they're presumed innocent. That doesn't mean that we as judges check our brains in at the door. I mean, there is, as I said earlier, with regard to bail bond, for example, a certain amount of discretion that we have as judges, but we have to operate within the framework of the law. And under the law, we owe as judges just as much to the accused as we do to the state and to the alleged victim. So it's important to remember that there are those within the system who have a duty to prosecute and go forward and present evidence and even be aggressive in that regard if those circumstances call for it. But that's not the judge's role.
Judges are generally, and Judge Steelman says this way, that most cases, if you've ever been in court, are not tried. Very few cases are ever tried. In Sessions Court, most of the cases are worked out between the defense attorney and the state. And I've sat there many a day without trying anything. They're presented to you, and in Sessions Court, and Judge Steelman's is a little more formal, but in Sessions Court you have a great volume of cases, and they're presented to you, and a lot of times you don't really know all the facts behind it. The state comes up and says the state wants to dismiss this case, or you know, whatever. So you can't force the state to prosecute. That's not your job. And Judge Sell has done a lot of things, but you have to be careful that you don't cross the line and that you are doing the role of a prosecutor or a crusader, because defendants, again, as Judge knows, they have rights. Those rights sometimes in the past have exceeded those of victims. Victims now, we have victims' rights, and they're becoming better recognized, but in the past, everybody worried about the defendant's right, your jury and trial and all these things that you're entitled to. But as the judge, you can only adjudicate what's put in front of you. And that, and again, not to downplay the role of judges, because I think we need to show that it's serious, but I can't punish anything. unless it's either tried in front of me and I find somebody guilty. And in my court, we don't even have jury trials, so a lot of these things, if they're going to be tried, they go up to Judge Steelman. And if they're dismissed or they're pled guilty, there's a lot of things I can't do. Now, if somebody wants to try a case in front of me, which they don't do a whole lot in front of judges, because they figure they can't hoodwink a judge. But if they want to try a case on an open plea and they've assaulted somebody, believe me, I will treat them appropriately. But that just rarely happens. Again, I'm not a full-time sessions court judge, but it just rarely happens that a case comes in front of you and you try a case and find them guilty and are able to punish them. That is not the norm in court. And if that's a problem, which it may be part of the problem, but the reality is we're not the moving party, we're the adjudicating party. And the prosecutor, the police, maybe who need to do more evidence-based prosecutions. As a judge, I can't do that. I can come to forums like this and say, it's a good idea and I hope they do it because I would like to be able to, if there is a defendant and that person is guilty, I would like to deliver the appropriate punishment to them. But I can't, say I want to convict more people. That goes beyond what judges are supposed to say. I think they should be punished fairly, and when they're convicted, I will do so. And I think judges would all say that. But, again, that's...
We do want to move on to the next question, but we do want to make that clear that we all do have a role and that you guys are human beings and you do see what's going on, but some things are just out of your power. You can't physically go in and just change things.